Welcome my friends, this is Maniacal Incorporated, and recently I have been playing a good chunk of Thrones of Britannia. I just finished a short fame victory as Mede, and I had some issues with the game. Some issues that are fairly heavily documented. The battle AI wasn't the greatest. At times the campaign felt a bit tedious and a bit monotonous. It took ages to get anything done, to travel from one end of the country to another. I quite liked the historical aspect of the game, some of the historical characters, but especially the historical buildings and landmarks that appeared. It's a game that had great potential, and I just wish it was something a bit more. There's something missing. So what I want to do is I'm going to check out some mods for Thrones of Britannia to see if any of these can fix the issues with the core game and make it something that I might want to come back to. Today, I'm going to take a look at Conquest 1066. And as the name suggests, it's based around the Battle of Hastings, and much like Thrones of Britannia itself, it's going to be very England-focused, but there are going to be some changes to Ireland and some updates to the campaign in Ireland. So here's the new campaign map for the 1066, Conquest 1066 mod. Here is Harold Godwinson. If we check the Eastern Norse, I believe, here is Normandy. And there is William the Bastard. He's just gotten a bit of a foothold on England, because he needs to have it, because France isn't in the game. We have the Western Norse.
You can rely on us.
So here is Eckmarkach, leading Eckmarkach Mac Ragnall, leading the Isles and controlling Dublin. We'll get onto that in a moment. And if we check the Gaels, in the base game, we were able to play as Flansinna, the King of Mede, in the 878 start. And for 1066, we have Vuin. The H in Muin, so this H is added when you have Linician, so it's Muin without the H, but then Unvuin. But we won't get too bogged down in the semantics of Irish. And here, leading, we have Thorluk Uvrian, the grandson of Brian Boru. And you'll know from the 1066 start in Crusader Kings 3 that Paradox has erroneously put Murica, who would be Thorluk's cousin, as the King of Munster at that start. Thorluk was King of Munster since 1063, and I have a video about the course of events in Ireland at this time period, as they relate to Crusader Kings 3. We have a custom-written faction information. There isn't anything massively egregious in there. It mentions that you've become the ruler of a land under the foot of the neighbouring kingdom of Line. That is correct, but of course it was Line who installed Thorluk as King of Munster in 1063. And you are hoping to emulate your grandfather, Brian Boru, and become the new High King. Other than these kind of changes, everything else is the exact same as the base game. We have legitimacy. Again, we have the church income from Mede. That was the cultural feature for Mede in the base game. And we have the Fair of Taltu, so the Talton Games, set around Telstown in County Meath, so maybe not entirely appropriate for Munster. High Cross, again heavily associated with Flansinna and with his career. What would we have instead for Munster? I'm not really too sure. And we have the same mid to high tier sword infantry. An interesting thing about the map is that Munster does not consist of Cork. So there was a Viking settlement in Cork, which I suppose is fair enough, but it also doesn't consist of Limerick. At the very least, Limerick should be a vassal of Munster, if not fully incorporated into the game. So Limerick would have been the Vikings of Limerick, and the Dalgash would have had a lot of trouble. They killed Brian Boru's father. They killed at least 3, if not 4 of his brothers. I'm not too sure. And Brian Boru had numerous battles against the Vikings before bringing them to heel. The game does mention something about the Vikings, actually, here in the faction information. So Munster is prey to the Viking ports which blight its shores. It most certainly is not. By this time period, 1066, the Vikings have been utterly crushed as a major power on the island. They're still there, they're still involved in politics, but they've been put in their place. They've been told to stop it. So that is the new campaign map. So we have Thorluk added for Munster, and there's a couple of other interesting factions that have been added around, like I said, Normandy. And we also have some of the English factions. Harold Godwinson. Let's take a look at what playing as Munster looks like. So as we start into the campaign, we zoom in on Imluk Ur, and we have our advisor from the base game, and they're going to tell us in a minute. They're going to spin us down a bit in this direction. One of our armies is garrisoned in the capital, ready to defend if necessary. So we're zooming in on Lismore, and then we're told, oh no, we must secure our borders by wiping out the rebels and prepare for war. Where is this rebel faction? So we're down here in Munster. Where is this rebel faction? It is up here, on the outskirts of Kells, where it is based in the base game. So they haven't been updated or moved. Let's take a look at a few things. First of all, I suppose we'll take a look at our family tree. So, Thorluk is the grandson of Brian Boru. At the Battle of Clontarf in 1014, Brian Boru is killed. He has been killed just after his son and presumed heir Mordecai and his son Thorluk. So Brian Boru, his son and his grandson are all killed in the Battle of Clontarf, and Brian's next eldest son Donica becomes the new leader of the Dalgosh. In 1023 he murders his half-brother Thaig to cement power in Munster, and Thaig of course was Thorluk's father, who we're playing as in this mod. And Thorluk goes to Limerick, or not Limerick, but Leinster, and gets the aid of Diarmid mac Mael na Mo, and eventually drives Donica out of Munster and seizes power. So that's a brief glimpse of the family history. So if we click on the family tree, here we have Thorluk, here we have his father Moel Shocknull, his mother Land. If you know your history, you'll know who these figures are. His brother-in-law, Crúl. So this is, of course, Moel Shocknull mac Moel Rooney, Flann Sinna's father, Flann Sinna's mother, Flann Sinna's sister, and his brother-in-law, Crúl mac Dunlinge, the king of Ossory, in the 878 start in the base game. So what they've just done is they've kind of renamed. There's Donica, Flann Sinna's son, who went a bit crazy in my recent playthrough. So what they've just done is they've just taken Thorluk and renamed him. So the rather interesting thing is that Crúl mac Dunlinge, who has been dead for, well over 100, if not 150 years at this stage, is now commanding your main army based in Cashel. So that's pretty much what has happened here. The map is actually identical from what I can see to the base game map. If we look at Leinster, we will see that it is not Diarmid mac Mael na Mo, but Donal who rules in Leinster. And then, like I said, up in Dublin we have Ecmarcach mac Ragnall, who was indeed the king of Dublin until he was deposed in 1052 by Diarmid mac Mael na Mo's son. Well, he was deposed by Diarmid, and Diarmid installed his son as the king of Dublin. So Dublin has been part of Leinster since 1052. And I suppose this is one of the major problems with Thrones of Britannia, with the Total War series in general, and with the Crusader King series in general, is that it is utterly incapable. They're both incapable of representing medieval Irish politics. We don't have vassalization during this time period. We have a kind of a submission or a system of submission. So basically, Thorluk has submitted to Diarmid Mac Mael na Mó, and Diarmid will go to Munster on a tour to Munster at one stage, and he will give gifts, wages, effectively, to Thorluk. And this is a very important aspect of medieval Irish politics, the system of submitting to other rulers. So at this time period, Diarmid Mac Mael na Mó basically has, as a vassal, Dublin, but he also has gained the submission of Munster, and he has gained the submission of Connacht. I'm not too sure about Meath, and of course Breffni has also submitted to Connacht, which has in turn submitted to Limerick, so he controls a massive chunk of the country, and it's on this basis that Diarmid is the High King. But this is a system that it is impossible to represent within the mechanics and systems of the Total War series and the CK3 series. So if we look at the diplomacy screen, we can see, for example, that there is no relationship whatsoever between Munster and Leinster. There is no relationship between Dublin and Leinster, or Dublin and anyone else. The only people that are in any way, make, shape or form related to each other is that Alach is still the overlord of Arguilla, which again is taken pretty much from the base game. I don't believe that any new buildings have been added. I don't believe that any new research trees have been added. There is one bit of research that has been updated, and that relates to the 2 new units. There might be a bit more, but the 2 that I have found are the Sword Infantry, the Clia Ari, and the Hounds of Cullen. We'll start with the Clia Ari. So they have the same description as the Fianna warband, but they are described as professional guards who form the backbone of the king's army. They're mentioned in passing in Dahi O'Cronin's early medieval Ireland, so I think that's maybe where they're taken from. They cost a good chunk of money. They're $9.90, and if we compare them to the Fianna warband, do you know what, we'll just compare them to the Arig warband as they're right beside them. So they have much stronger armour, a slightly higher morale, speed is only a small bit slower, and melee skill is higher, as is melee damage a small bit. Or melee damage is actually the exact same. So I think it's basically they've just added a stronger unit. You can see that there is a fairly hefty increase in the armor, so it makes them a bit stronger. And the other unit that's been added then is, like I said, the Hounds of Cullen. So we have Wolfhounds, and we now also have Hounds of Cullen. The description is the exact same as the Wolfhounds. Hound of Cullen singular would be Cú Cullen. So when Setanta killed the guard dog of the blacksmith Cullen, as Cullen was bringing up that dog's pups to replace it, Setanta said that he would guard Cullen's anvil and smithery, and that he would serve as his hound, and became Cú Cullen, and then went off and had great adventures and didn't do any guarding of the forge. So Cullen got a raw deal there. I think the reason why these have been added, they seem to have the exact same abilities, but if we actually compare them, we can see that melee skill is slightly higher, melee damage is massively higher. So it's gone from 9 to 38, and a slight boost in morale as well. I never used the Wolfhounds during my playthrough, so maybe the devs of this mod found that the Wolfhounds were a bit underpowered, and decided to give these guys a big boost in melee damage, and slight bit in melee skill, and a slight bit as well in morale. Down here in the southeast of England, in Dufiri, just outside Cantwaraburg, we have what little of the Norman army has come across. Actually, I don't see the Norman army here at all, but this is where Normandy, the forces of Normandy are based, as they are going to head down towards Hastingas. My god, English names make absolutely no sense whatsoever. But you'll see down here in the bottom right, early September, 1066, and if we were to go on to the next turn, I think each turn is about 2 weeks or something like that, because again, the idea, the movement speed hasn't been changed. So if we actually go to some place with a spelling system that actually works, and a place that actually adheres to a spelling system, we can see that these guys in Cashel, these are the regions that they can reach, and this is maybe about 2 to 3 weeks of a marching distance. So it's the exact same reach as in the base game, but it's now taking only about 2 weeks of travel, as opposed to the entire season before. And I have meant to do that. I'm thinking of doing that at some stage, getting somebody down to Ras Alahar and having them march all the ways to the Grianon of Alach to see just how long that takes in the base game. Here in Alach, we have A, so I'm thinking this is A Finlia, so that would be Flan Shinna's stepfather, and Muel Shocknall Macmuel Rooney's successor as High King of Ireland, as King of Tara, in around 863. So that is a look at the map in Conquest 1066. Like I said, most of the game is concerned with what's going on way over here in England, but they've made a couple of updates to Ireland. I think it's rather interesting to see that they have added Munster instead of keeping the game in Meath, which is on a downward slope at this stage. They've instead shifted the focus to Munster, which is really cool. You get to play as Thorloch in quite an interesting period of time, 1072. Munster and Meath will end up going to war with Leinster, in which Diarmid is killed, and Thorloch will then swarm in, will take control of Ossory, which is independent at this stage. It's not incorporated into Leinster, but here in the game it's part of Leinster. He'll swarm into Ossory, gain their submission, gain the submission of Leinster, which is now in a dynastic crisis because Donegal is killed before Diarmid Macmuel na Mo, so his son in Dublin, and then Thorloch will get the submission there, submission in Meath, and submission in Connacht, then become the new High King of Ireland. So we're entering the game in a really interesting stage. Now, one of the things I found interesting about my recent playthrough is that whenever a battle came up, the retention rate on the video collapsed. And for a series called Total War, people really did not enjoy the war part. So there have been some problems with the battle AI, and it's well documented in Thrones of Britannia in particular. The battles didn't exactly have the most diverse cast of troops, which was another thing that people complained about. Basically, it's just men with short, pointy sticks and men with longer, pointy sticks that they throw. That's about it. We have a full list of the infantry here. We can see that we have the Clea Ari, and then everything else is basically the same as the base game. The Wolfhounds and the Hounds of Cullen are very similarly priced. There's just 50 quid of a difference, and also at the start of the game, at the start of a campaign, you need to research the Wolfhounds, whereas the Hounds of Cullen are actually available right from the start. I haven't done a huge amount of custom battles, but I'm just going to take out the Clea Ari and the Hounds of Cullen to give them a look. We're going to play on the Hill of Tara, which looks absolutely nothing like the Hill of Tara. And we're going to fight the Vikings. I was just thinking maybe it would have been a better idea if I had gone up against the Normans and I could have reproduced some of the battles from the Norman invasion of 1169. The mod uses the Immersive Shields and Armies mod, which we can see here on the Dublin forces, so very impressive looking. They look a lot different to what they would look like in the base game. So we got some helmeted and fancy shielded Viking forces. Over here, hiding in the tree line, we have the Hounds of Cullen, and again, we have some very impressive looking shields and some very impressive looking clothing on these guys. It does, in fairness, look a lot better than the base game. Breaks up the kind of the monotony a bit. If we look at the Clea Ari, we can see a lot of steel helmets, which would not be appropriate to the time period. We can see a lot of heavy padding. We can see a lot of... We can see chainmail. We can see a lot of kind of metal padding or metal armor. Very ornate helmets, which again would not be entirely appropriate, but it does distinguish them from all of the other units that you would have on the Irish side. So do you know what, the Immersive Shields and Armies mod actually does a really good job. We have these guys in their saffron cloaks, happy out with themselves. They're all up for a scrap. And the Vikings have declared a general charge. I was mobilizing, or not mobilizing, but bringing my troops into line. So let's let them get in a bit closer and unleash the dogs. They're bringing their troops forward, but aren't coming all the ways in, and it looks like we've hit some forces in the woods. So let's see, where will we send the dogs to? These guys are going to hit some mailed javeliners who've got in a bad position by the looks of it. So do you know what? We'll send the dogs in that direction. And it is now looking like a general charge. It looks like bedlam. So our dogs have gone in against their eastern hindmen. They're not doing a great job against these guys. So I probably haven't put them in a tremendous place. Do you know what? I was too excited to send in the dags. We do, however, have our Clea Ari. We have foreign warriors, which is what it's calling. Oh yes, these axemen. I was wondering who these foreign warriors were supposed to be. Here is their king, so we will send in the Clea Ari to see what they can do. So the Clea Ari have gotten in. They've suffered no losses so far. They seem to be doing a good chunk of damage. We're seeing a lot of their forces routing. Here's their general, and if we could take him out, we might be in a better position. Our own general dealing with some horse troops that have run from the battlefield. We're surrounding their general, and our foreign warriors still have not been mobilized. The dogs are actually still holding on. Fair play to them. And we have now pretty much ended up sending everything in from the looks of it. They have some warband coming in. We're going to try and concentrate on their general. There's indeed one Arig warband that is doing nothing at the moment. The enemy general has gone down, so the Clea Ari have suffered 3 losses so far and have ripped through this region. Ripped through their general. Oh, heavily depleted their general's forces. We should be able to swarm across in this region. So the Clea Ari, indeed very powerful. The dogs, poor old dogs, they're only down to about 2 of them. They're only down to 1, so I didn't make a great attempt with the dogs. So we've totally taken out the center here. We're still on 117 Clea Ari. We've totally taken out the central position here. These guys don't know what to do. They're not too sure. They're just hanging around, do nothing. So there's a pretty hefty battle fought here, and we're splitting off into 3 sections. Our own archers raining down arrows on top of our men. But yeah, should be able to send in a guard here. The poor dags. The poor dags. You can see my lack of experience in using them in the base game. But the Clea Ari, I know these guys also have taken, well, they've just been deployed, so no wonder they've taken no losses. But the Clea Ari, like, absolutely staggering devastation once they hit the battle. And I think we can see the very last remnants being wound up. They're just basically holding out here in the center. We'll send in the general into a pile of archers. What could possibly go wrong? So Conquest 1066, mostly centering around the events of the Battle of Hastings, the Norman invasion of England, and the battle for William's claim to the English throne. There's a couple of updates to Ireland. Mostly just kind of changes to the base 878 start. So Thurlock is put in there. You get to play as Munster instead of Meath, which I think makes a really good change. It's probably the best choice for this time period, and indeed, considering that a lot of people might have familiarity with this time period from CK3, it's a good choice, I think, to use to go with something that is familiar. Much of the rest of the country is kept the same, however, and we have pretty much the same rulers and the same Enale family as the base game in the 878 start. Again, it shows that the main focus is on England and on the Norman conquest, but it would be interesting to have, we'll say, Diarmid Macmail na Mó in Leinster, to see can he retain power, can his son continue to hold on to Dublin, or can Thurlock overcome them, maybe join with Meath and depose them, and replicate the real historical events of his rise to power. So I don't think there's enough here in the game to actually drag me back in and do another playthrough. I did find the Meath playthrough pretty tedious and monotonous at stages. However, I would actually like to try, and I might do that in future, is a couple of battles between Munster and the Normans, especially with the Clea Ari and maybe some Gol Oglig. It might make the battle somewhat reflective of what it would have been like by the 1160s. But yeah, this is definitely one to keep an eye on. There might be some more changes coming down the line, and if nothing else, it adds dramatic changes to Britain and to England, so if you're more interested in that aspect, I think there is plenty there. So this has been a quick look at Conquest 1066, a mod for Thrones of Britannia, and I'm going to be looking at a few more over the next while. Thank you all very much for joining me on this episode. If there's any mods that you would like to recommend, put them in the comment section below, and I will talk to you all again in future.